Ah, yes. The future is here. I can debate high, lofty concepts in sweats. Now that we've got to video 2, let's refer to the monitor. Actually, let me give a little bit of preface here. The question is, in the Venus Project, once we get past this idea of how do we find price, how do we find that grand equation that the computer would use, and ultimately it'd just be an equation of supply and demand. It doesn't really matter. It's just price, whatever you call whatever you want. It's just that minus the whole profit scheme. Now the question is, if we're doing away with all the repetitive jobs and we're getting machines to do all this shit for us, or as many repetitive jobs as we can, and that is to say that things like a surgeon would still have to do his work and so on. There would be maintenance every once in a while, or there would be someone would have to stop their great happy lifestyle and go to work. Well, how the hell do we get people to go to work when everything normally is automated, or as many things as possible is automated for us right there at a touch of a button, or even less than that, maybe just a thought. We have an implant where it's, oh my God, we could go as far as you want. How do you motivate people? Well, what I want to do is bring you to a couple of scientific studies that are very mainstream. This is very odd for me because normally when I'm talking science I like to stay in the fringe, but this is quite mainstream, so I imagine not many people will have a problem with it. I had a degree, a little 4-year degree in psychology, but my emphasis was in IO psychology, industrial organizational psychology. Basically it's business psychology. It has everything to do with employee training, motivation, selection, placement. Has to do with environmental control, sorts of things to help people, whatever, do better. Before it was all that sort of fluffy kind of stuff, it was time motion studies. Basically, a guy would come in with a stopwatch and see how many widgets you could make in a minute. And then he would try to manipulate your environment such that your little screw box was closer to the little bolt box so that you can make more widgets faster. It wasn't a very rewarding work, but anyway, that all changed with the emergence of these Hawthorne studies, they've so been called, and then the resulting research from that we'll talk about a little bit. I found a website that talks about IO psychology, and I'll put the link there, but I'll just read just a paragraph from this to give you an idea, because they say it very well. The Hawthorne researchers eschewed economic incentives as a driving force behind work, and painted a rich picture of the informal relationships, those not specified in the organizational chart or job specification, among workers themselves, in addition to those among workers and the managers, which was the focus of the classical view. The guy where you draw a map, you say you're in charge of these people, you're in charge of those people, okay, time motion, ready, set, go, 1 minute, and see how many widgets you can make. And then you just move shit around, you move desks around. It's really very mechanical. That's the classical view. What they were seeing here was a departure from that classical view, that people, in other words, came to work not for money, but for the social rewards and satisfactions inherent in human organization. And what this started to spring out was a lot of different research out there, where they were, the ones that I read specifically had to do with interviewing people who were in a state, or in a state of financial comfort of some kind, and they were asked, do you want more money, or how motivating is more money? And what they found is that work product would increase with financial incentive only to a point, and it wasn't multimillionaire. It was actually pretty normal. It was basically as soon as the person felt as though they were making ends meet, and now that's very subjective, but basically what it meant for most people is they were getting their food, water, shelter, they could pay for insurance, they could pay the mortgage, they could pay their child care, they got a 401k working in the background, they maybe have some investments, whatever. They can afford to go to Tahiti once a year, or once every couple years, whatever. They kind of have the American dream sort of thing going on. As soon as they reached that point, money suddenly was less and less and less of a motivating element, that suddenly there was work to be done and money was not motivating them. Well, now that goes against our classical idea of the idea that it's all about money, it's all about profits, it's all about, you know, as Eddie Izzard says, it's rising up out of the gutter and getting all the money in the world and sticking it in your ears and going crazy. I love Eddie Izzard, by the way. Check it out. But the point here is, what is the point? Oh, I was so taken with my little sketch. Oh, that money is not ultimately a motivating factor. Okay, I've repeated myself a few times. Moving on. What they wanted in place of money was influence. They wanted to see their ideas in their organization. They wanted to be a meaningful part of their organization. They wanted to be part of the brains of the organization. They had ideas. Oh my God, when I worked for that mental institution, one of the things I took upon myself was to go help an individual who was running behind in her office work. I did the I.O. thing where, one, I changed her program around so that she could enter in the information faster, which I did. Just don't come away thinking I'm a computer programmer, but I was able to change the way she did data entry such that she could do it faster. That's the classical I.O. kind of thing. The second one was I was looking at what other sorts of things that could possibly be done. I interviewed the kitchen staff. It was a commissary on grounds of the mental institution where they would make all the meals for the inpatients. And they had all these ideas of just how to make things better and more efficient. They all seemed interested, genuinely interested in saving the state's money, which is so bizarre because the state is always going to have money. They point a gun to our head to collect taxes. They don't have to worry about the money coming from the state, but they still all wanted their little kitchen to be a tightly knit machine, but they couldn't, of course, because they were just peons. And it distracted really actually from my real job, was just to work and catch this woman up. And changing her thing around was extra, but it made me realize that, like, people want not only to do good work, but they want their organization to be good and to be efficient and to do their thing well. And there's a certain inherent reward, as the Hawthorne guys said, the social rewards and satisfaction inherent in human organization. It's a fascinating thing. So here's what I have you to consider. Do you remember Maslow's hierarchy of needs? It's this pyramid thing where you have all these needs at the bottom: food, water, shelter, and you go up, and I think the next one's safety, and so on, and blah, 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 all the way up to self-actualization. What the f that means? I guess you get a cardboard crown at Burger King or something. Whatever it is, you need all of those needs at one level in order to progress to the next level, where you feel comfortable enough to look for things like safety, to look things for interpersonal relationships, and so on. What seems to be emerging out of the scientific literature is that money is only a motivating factor insofar as some basic needs are met. So now this is very important. So when we say that money is motivating, it's not. It is only to a point. It's not indefinitely motivating. It's not always motivating. And it's actually motivating up to a very specific point in which we have all of our needs fulfilled. Now, what does the Venus Project propose? It proposes that you don't have to work for those basic needs, that we have technology to do it for you. Isn't that interesting? So for the one stance between needs, that money is an heavily motivating factor, we have the technology today, thank God for all of us. We're very lucky to have the technology to automate all the tasks required to meet those basic needs. So now we have just cut out of the equation the very area where money is motivating. People want to work beyond money as a motivator. People want to work because they want to have influence on their world. They want to solve problems. We all solve problems. That's what the Venus Project wants to do. The Venus Project wants to turn the world into a university where we all are approaching problems and we are testing our problems objectively. Ooh, there's a scary thought. Through science. It doesn't matter how old you are, how young you are, how educated, how uneducated. If you have an idea, anyone can test it scientifically. I mean, if you want to smash atoms or something, you might have to get creative if you don't have a lot of resources. But in the Venus Project, you would possibly have resources. That there are some ideas there that, so long as you could back up, you could say, look, I think this will work. We need the resources. They say, well, why do you think it works? Well, because of all this scientific literature. Similarly to how I'm proposing this to you, saying that when people say money is motivating, it's only motivating insofar as it provides our basic needs. Once we have our basic needs met, money's no longer motivating. But we are still motivated to work because there is an inherent reward in social interactions. You know, the point of life is not to rise up out of the gutter and get all the money in the world, as Eddie Izzard says, put it in your ears and go, pfft. That's not the point of life. The point of life is simply to make it easier. Simply make it easier. Simply make it better. We have pains. We have anxieties. We have fears. We have this. We have that. We have all this negativity. But we also have resources that could be applied scientifically in such a way that we could alleviate those pains, those sufferings, those hindrances, those shortcomings, the hunger, the poverty, the diseases, the whatever it might be. The resources are there. That's all life is. That's all life is. It's that here, you start off with a negative number. Here are a couple positive numbers out in the world scattered about in the forms of iron ore and fresh water and, you know, renewable energy, whatever else. Now go see if you can get your equation to be equal again. See if you can get that negative number to a 0 or to a +1, a +2. Who knows? That's the game of life. There's nothing else. Government, entrepreneurship, screw that.